Welcome for mathematics lesson. We're going to do statistics 2. We are told that the table below represents marks scored in a mathematics test. We have the marks in classes, then the number of students. I've already modified the table to ease our working. So I have the marks now in a column, then the frequencies like that. Using an assumed mean of 44.5, determine mean marks for the test. So the first thing we're going to do is to determine mean. For us to get mean, we are supposed to get the value of x, and this is the midpoint. The midpoint of each class. Therefore, the midpoint of 10 and 19, we just add 10 and 19, then we divide the sum by 2. That will give us 14.5. Because the classes have equal intervals, then we're going to have 24.5, 34.5, 44.5, 54.5, 64.5, 74.5. So those are the respective midpoints for each class. We are also going to calculate the values of t, and t is going to be the deviation from the deviation of the assumed mean. Assumed mean is capital A, from each midpoint. So I have 14.5 and I subtract 44.5. This gives me negative 30. 24.5 minus 44.5, this will give me negative 20. 34.5 minus 44.5, this will give me a negative 10. Then 44.5 minus 44.5, 0. This will become 10, 20, and 30. So that is how we get the values of t. The next, I now need the product of each frequency and the deviations of each midpoint from the assumed mean. So I'm going to multiply 2 by negative 30 to give me negative 60. 6 by negative 20 to give me negative 120. I also need 7 by negative 10 to give me negative 70. 13 by 0 to give me 0. Then 6 by 10 to give me 60. 4 by 20 to give me 80. 2 by 30 to give me 60. So those are the products of each frequency and the deviations of midpoints and assumed mean. So I also need the summations of ft. The summations of ft. I'll need negative 60, negative 120, negative 70. Then 0, we add 60, plus 80, plus 60. This gives me negative 50. Negative 50. I also need to get the sum of all the frequencies, the total frequency. Total frequencies, I'll start with 2. Let me use the cumulative frequency column to get the frequency. So I'll start with 2. Then 2 plus 6, that gives me 8. Plus 7, that gives me 15. Plus 13, that gives me 28. Plus 6, that gives me 34. Plus 4, that gives me 38. Then plus 2, this gives me 40. So we have a total of 40. Total of 40. So the totals of frequency is going to be exactly 40. For us to get mean, I think now we are almost sorted for part 1. For us to get what we call mean, then we need the summations of ft divide by the summations of f, then we add the assumed mean, and we are going to give negative 50 out of 40, and we add 44.5. So negative 50 divided by 40, this gives me negative 1.25. Then I add 44.5. This is going to give me exactly 43.25. So that is the exact mean for these marks. The next, we are told to find the standard deviation. For me to obtain the standard deviation, then I'm going to give, standard deviation is abbreviated as S squared. Okay, for me to get standard deviation, then I'll need variance first. Variance, which is S squared, is usually given by f of d squared divided by f summation of f. Then I subtract f of d out of f total. Then we square this part. But now it's good to know that instead of deviations as d, we have used them as f. So I'm going to have ft squared divided by the summation of f. Then I subtract ft divided by summation of f to give me what we call the variance. So I'm going to get frequencies multiplied by the deviations squared. The first one is going to be 2 multiplied by negative 30 squared. This gives us 1800. The next is going to be 6 multiplied by negative 20 squared. This gives me 2400. The next will be 7 multiplied by negative 10 squared. Remember, I'm squaring strictly the deviations. This gives me 100. This one is going to be 0 because of the value of t. Then the next one is going to be 6 into the deviation is 10 squared, 600. The next is going to be 4 into 20, 4 into 20 squared, 1600. Finally, we will have 2 into 30, and that is squared, so 1800. So now I'm going to have the summations of f of t squared. This is going to be when I add all these values. So when I add everything, I'm getting 8900. So now in the formula, I need to have 8900 out of 40. Then I subtract f of t divided by summation of f, which has already been computed, negative 1.25 squared. So when I divide these by 40, I'm going to get 2.5. Then I subtract. When I take 1.25 and I square, I will have 1.5625. So 2.5 minus this figure, I'm getting a variance of 0.9375. If this is our variance, for me to get what we call standard deviation S, I need the square root of variance. So the square root of this figure is going to be 14.86 to 4 significant figures. So that is going to be the variance. Lastly, we are taught to determine the pass mark if 30% of the students failed. So 30 are between 0 and the pass mark. That 30% is between 0 and the pass mark. That means I just need the 30th percentile. 30th percentile. This means I need to use the 30th percentile, the lower class boundary of the class that contains the 30th percentile. Then I add 30% of the total frequency, and I subtract the cumulative frequency just before the cumulative frequency of this class. Then I divide by frequency of the class having the 30th percentile. Then I'm going to multiply these by the class width. So the class width, I can use a S for class size, W for class width. So I'm going to use S to mean class size. So now let me apply the formula. 30% of the total students in this exam is going to be 12. 30% is going to be 12. Therefore, I need the class which contains the 12th student. So the class that contains the 12th student, according to the cumulative frequencies, that class is going to be, the first one is not containing 12, the second is not containing, but the third one, which is having a cumulative frequency of 15, is carrying the 12th student. So this is our 30% percentile class. So its lower class boundary is going to be 29.5. So to substitute in the formula, I'll need 29.5. Then I add 30% of total F is going to be 12. Then I subtract cumulative frequency just before the cumulative frequency of the class we intend to use is going to be 8. So I divide by 8. I subtract 8. Then I divide everything with the frequency of that class. And the frequency of this class is going to be 7. Then I multiply with a class width of 10. So when I compute this, I will get the 30th percentile, and that is going to be the pass mark in this class. Therefore, when I take 12 and I subtract 8, then I divide by 7, then I multiply by 10, then I add 29.5, I'm going to get 35.21. Thank you for following. Subscribe and share.